So my name's Scott Johnston. I'm the Acting Public Service Commissioner for New South Wales, and really proud to be able to do another one of these webinars where we're reaching huge numbers of people to try and provide some support to working in a way that helps you personally in your day-to-day in this really unusual, challenging, stressful time that we're in, but also helps you create teams and groups of people to work together in a way that's supportive and ultimately keeps delivering on the work that we're trying to do. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that to any other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people on the call today with us. So we're hosting a webinar today, which hopefully this is what you're here for, on how you can effectively manage dispersed remote teams who may need to work flexibly. And this is what we're all experiencing. For the past 2 years, the Commission, we've been working with the sector to improve flexible working in support of the Premier's policy commitment that all roles in government can be flexible on an if not, why not basis. So that provided that we can maintain or improve our service to citizens. And maintaining and improving these services is a real challenge for us now, as we all are experiencing. And I'm hearing pockets of actual brilliance and effectiveness where things are happening really quickly, and more effectively. But fundamentally, how do we protect our business continuity when almost overnight the way we work has been tipped on its head? Some of this will be really positive change, but some will present real dilemmas for managers and leaders. So we must be mindful of the need to protect team cohesion and watch out for our individual wellbeing, our own and our people's. So this is a daily dilemma for every manager. It's a daily dilemma I'm feeling, and I'm sure you are as well, where we're trying to find an equilibrium, a balance between the needs of our citizens or stakeholders, plus our team as a whole and our individual people. No one wants to find we've brilliantly delivered our work, but at the cost of our team spirit, or that our people are both stressed and distressed, or that we're focusing our energies in the wrong direction and not achieving the milestones that we were committed to. So the good news is that we've got some ideas to help you work through this, and that you won't need to learn a whole new way of managing, but you'll need to put more emphasis on some of the things you might take for granted when you see most of your team day to day. You need to be more intentional about your team's communication, collaboration and connection, both internally and with your customers, whoever they are. I'm sure we've all been in video conferences and phone meetings of the past few weeks where the skill in managing a meeting and a discussion to be inclusive has been more challenging than ever before. But you can do it, and there's ways to do it if you're mindful of it. So it means involving your team in the design of the work, and by taking a team-based approach and agreeing to your rules of the road. And if you do this, we know from our work to date that you'll successfully support your team through a tough time, but everyone will get the work done. As an added benefit, you'll open up the opportunity for your team to get creative about the way they plan and arrange their work. You might be able to open up efficiencies so your new version of BAU is changed for the better. I mean, this is an example of, in the past, we were working with small groups and sharing messages that was targeted by cluster. Over 2 webcasts, we've now done well over 1,000 people have tuned in to learn. And we wouldn't have even remotely got close to that if we didn't have to flip our working on its head. My personal experience, which I'd like to sort of talk to now, just is that this is really hard. I think it's draining and it's tiring, but the pure joy and brilliance that we're seeing of people becoming closer than ever before, because we know we have to put the effort into the things that we probably in the past took for granted, means when we start recovering and working out of this situation, there's going to be some hard-coded benefits for the way we work that'll change work forever. So we've had available some tools for a while on managing dispersed teams and taking a team-based approach to flexibility. But what we'll do today is apply that to our current COVID-19 context. What are the routines, the structures, the habits, the new habits that your team may need to put in place or use more often to maintain that equilibrium? And today's webinar will address all of these things. It'll take a really practical, tactical approach on what you can do, and some of you may be doing already. And that'll be a great validation that you're on the right track. For others, it's an opportunity to do things differently. So after this webinar, we'll also invite you to join a closed LinkedIn group where you can seek advice or assistance on flexible working from our subject matter experts. We'll learn about resources already available and connect with your colleagues across the sector so you can share those creative solutions that you're all developing. We're all in this together. Nothing's been clearer than ever before, I think, in our working lives, that we've all got to be in this together to achieve what we're trying to do. There's no playbook available, so sharing and learning from each other is what's going to help us get through this challenge in the best possible way. I'd also, before passing to Siobhan and Kat, like to acknowledge that we public servants not only help the vulnerable in our community, but also our workforce contains many employees who've been made vulnerable to the situation that we've now. The situation may disproportionately affect our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander colleagues and our colleagues with disability. And as teams, we need to be able to step up to provide support so they can keep themselves safe, yet still feel very much connected. Again, it's about thinking about your full workforce and everyone's unique personal situation. If you can support them in the best way, we'll be in a better place, but being mindful to it. So flexible working can help hugely with this. And as managers, we'll need to proactively offer it to people who might be worried to ask for it, and find solutions for using it in ways that we haven't thought of before. So that's it from me, and I'll come back at the end to say thanks to everyone. But I'll now pass on to Siobhan Bray and Kat Colvin from the Flexible Working team, who've lived and breathed this for a while now, and who I learn every day from about their experiences around flexible working. So over to you, and have a good day, everyone.
Thank you, Scott. Hi, I'm Siobhan. I'm from the Flexible Working team here at the PSC. So as Scott mentioned, today we'll talk about how the basic structures and processes you need to put in place to set your team up for success for what looks like it may be an extended period of time. You might lead a team, in fact you probably do lead a team, or have worked in a team that's used some form of flexibility for years. But what we're doing now is really taking it to a whole new level. It's flexible working as an extreme sport. And as Scott mentioned, for many of you, you may already have some of these structures and processes in place, in which case what we'd urge you to do is use the chat function today to contribute those. Because there's no question that what we have in front of us is a challenging time, but an incredible opportunity to share practice across the sector and to learn from each other. And as we eventually come out of this phase into the next phase and transition back, learning from each other will give us some fantastic ideas for whatever the new normal is going to be for us after this. So in order to maintain business continuity in times of disruption like this, you'll probably need to adapt the way you work in your team, whether that's adapting your management style or whether it's learning a whole new way of working and taking the opportunity to do things differently. The good news, as Scott mentioned, is that running a virtual team or working in a virtual team is much the same as you'll adopt many of the same techniques and strategies that you would do so in an office or in any kind of workplace environment, but there's a few key differences. So you're already responsible for driving progress in work and supporting your team and managing for optimal performance. And you're also responsible for role modelling the kind of behaviour you want to see in your team. But the key difference now is that level of intentionality that Scott mentioned, plus taking a few of the other skills you have already to the next level. And so what we'll talk about today is essentially 4 core design principles that you'll need to adopt in taking a principles-based approach to flexible working. And then from there, we'll move on to talking about what are the tactical things that exhibit or make manifest those 4 different principles. The first one is shared responsibility. It is so important that that the team has a very strong sense of shared responsibility for getting the work done. The old hierarchical models will have been dated for some time, but they simply don't make sense now. And so there needs to be responsibility for getting the work done, a responsibility for making flexibility work, and a shared responsibility for making other people's flexibility and work as well. Number 2 is that there needs to be respect for people's arrangements over this time and respect for everything that many of us are juggling. Many of us have children at home, of course, or we have elder care arrangements or other significant care arrangements. So recognition that and respect for the fact that people are juggling multiple roles at the same time. and trying to do them all during the one day can be, and the stress and the tension, but also the flexibility that needs to be introduced as a result of that. Number two is trust and openness. We can't emphasise enough how important they are. It's really important as a team to have a safe space where everyone can talk honestly about how they're feeling, how they're struggling, the ups, the downs, but also starting from a place of trust for when we inevitably drop the ball, because it will happen. So it's important to understand and accept that everyone's trying to do the right thing. Certainly what we've found in the work we've done with the sector is people overwhelmingly try to do the right thing in their roles, and they're very pragmatic about the work that has to be done. But starting from a place of trust becomes critical at times like this when you just can't see each other as often, and your communication may be a little more flawed or a little less efficient than usual. And the last one is the two-way street. So it's about understanding that we need to be flexible about their flexibility. And number two is the necessity to meet a reasonable diversity of employee needs over this period, because we're going to get an insight into each other's lives, like you're having an insight into my slightly messy kitchen at the moment, that we don't necessarily expect or anticipate until this, and never have until this point. So above all as well, I gently challenge everyone to consider your own biases as well. Most of us have come up through the ranks with an expectation that work looks a certain way, and that we do it in a certain way, usually in a 7-hour block in one building. So challenge the idea that that flexibility should look a certain way, or your work should look a certain way, because we really are, as Scott mentioned, we're tipping it on its head right now. Over this period, it's an intense period of flexibility for anyone, for any reason. And it's certainly going to be interesting to see what we learn from that period. It never really made sense to ask for flexibility in the past, or to provide a reason rather for flexibility in the past. It makes even less sense now for us to need a business case. It's just the reality of how we have to work. So let's figure out the best way that we can do that in a way that's, as Scott mentioned, that we can protect an equilibrium between business outcomes, team outcomes, and individual outcomes. We know from the data, from the work we've done across the sector for the past 18 months, that most teams, when they have those structures in place, will maintain or improve those 3 outcome areas. We know that done properly, designed properly, that flexibility will very quickly become BAU to a certain extent. But let's talk today about the structures you need to put in place in order for that to happen, and the structures that these teams and the pilots that we've done have found have really worked for them. So now first I can see some chat here. Yes, it's just some basic hygiene factors. Everyone is on mute. Please use the chat function. We have 2 people moderating the chat. They will answer as many questions as they can. If you're contributing your ideas or what's working for your team through the chat function, please know that we will capture that, and we'll share all of those ideas through our LinkedIn group later on. The other thing I would ask is that, I don't know about you guys, but I know that certainly recently I've found it difficult to keep track of emails popping up and IM messages popping up and text messages popping up. So please do your cognitive bandwidth a favour. Turn off your mobile phone, close down your email, and just immerse yourself in this webinar for the next hour. Your brain will thank you. And there will be, I can confirm, we will have a captioned copy of this webinar and these slides available for you later on. So next I shall pass you over to my colleague Kat Coughlin, and she'll get started on the next topic. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Siobhan, and thanks everyone for joining us this morning. So we just wanted to start by defining what a virtual team means. So it's really one where everyone in the team works from different locations. At this time, that is mostly working from home. But when we do return after the COVID-19 crisis, you could have team members working from places other than home, other offices or other locations. Not everyone can work from home. So at least 2.5 days a week, your team would be separately located, not together. So as managers of a virtual team at this time, we really need to adapt our management style in terms of the way that the team communicates, collaborates, and connects. So up front, we need to adapt our face-to-face management skills to be replaced with workarounds that can be done remotely. So for example, we're used to having face-to-face meetings. How confident are we to switch those to online meetings? Think about how those are going so far. Do you know, or does your team know when to use email or collaboration technologies such as MS Teams? How can you ensure that your meetings are still effective online? When is it absolutely necessary to bring people face to face together to make decisions? Obviously, we're not doing that at this time, but all the skills that we're sharing with you today, you will use later on when we reset our workplaces. So good team communication means that everyone has the information that they need to perform in their roles. When everyone's dispersed, it becomes crucial to productivity and those feelings of inclusion if everyone knows what they need to know. So you need to agree on the processes that you'll use for communication as a team. For instance, it might be really important to decide the minimum contact that you'll have with each person, be they one-on-one meetings, online or in person. Think about those team members who are extrinsically motivated. They might be your extroverts. They might struggle to maintain momentum at home at this time. So talk to them about what will work for them. And similarly with those extroverts on your team, what will work for those people too? What new habits do we need to form to avoid isolation and to maintain momentum and really maintain our motivation as a team? But we'll discuss some of those habits later on. Just ask each person in your team what works for them, how often they would like to meet with you or meet as a team to really kind of keep that momentum going. How will your team share information and stay connected on the important matters? It's super easy to fall out of the loop when you're working remotely. We'll feel it more at this time. It's harder to stay in touch and people receive information differently online. We need to be really mindful of those things we know about nonverbal communication. So as a team, you can decide when you will use email, when you might use MS Teams, when you might use Skype or phone conferencing. It just depends on what you've got available to you as a team. But I guess our top tip is to pick a platform and stick to it. It's, as Siobhan mentioned, really difficult when there's lots of different places or sources of information, and it can be really hard to remember what one you have to look back to find that piece of information that you need. But if that one that you focus on as a team falls through, if it drops out, what would be your plan B and your plan C to make sure that you're not wasting that time trying to get everyone onto the meeting if the technology fails you? And then in terms of how you work together as a team, the New South Wales Government Behavioural Insights team has shared some lessons from science recently. So they recommend structuring your team communication in short bursts at regular intervals. So you come together as a team for a short burst and maybe do some brainstorming or some decision making or sharing information together. And then you draw back from each other as a team for that more focused, uninterrupted time that helps people just get on with it and not be continually distracted by all the information flying around. So I personally have set up my, my notifications so that they're not interrupting me, so that I can really do some deep thinking in between the times when I do then check the messages. And I've let my team know that that's how I'm going to work. And if they really need me, they can call me on my mobile. Also, you need to decide how you'll communicate and collaborate with other teams where you've got those interdependencies. So will the other teams know how to reach you? Will they know how to work with you on a project, how to share information? How will you collaborate using technology at this time? So for example, brainstorming or discovery sessions, you can use new technologies like Neuriva or Canva, if you can access those, obviously. things like visual boards you can do using MS Teams or Miro. So just have the team talk about what you can access and what might work for you as a team. And then for your clients, what are their expectations around responsiveness, especially if things change or stay changed for a lot longer? How can they get hold of you? What are their expectations around the, I guess, the contracts you have in place with them? And, you know, how can you address any dilemmas or misgivings that they might have at this time? Now, there are some basic foundation stones that we need to put in place. And we'll just prep you that once I've shared some information with you, we'd love you to use the chat function to share some of your top tips for remote meetings. So just get ready to start using the chat now. Okay, so obviously our meetings have had to change. So all of those disciplines that we might have had before for external meetings, like sending out the agenda and all the papers well in advance, we can now use those techniques to apply to our internal team meetings. Just ensure that you make your meetings as accessible as possible, because that really just improves the experience for everyone. So before every team meeting, you might need to circulate a screen reader friendly agenda that includes things like the key topics that will be discussed, and even down to the detail of what time is allocated and who will lead the discussion, who will be attending and who will be sending apologies, because it's actually really important ahead of time that your team knows who will be there. If there's certain topics that they need a decision made on, they need to know who will be around the table. Is there any content that people must prepare or read beforehand? Are there any other relevant documents or information that will be crucial for the meeting? They all need to be sent out ahead. And I'd say that if you can send your draft agenda out a few days ahead and ask your team to add items to the agenda, you're more likely to get that engaged meeting from everyone, because everyone's had a bit of a say in what will the meeting look like. And then once you do actually meet, how will the meeting run? So how will your attendees signal that they want to speak or respond to a question? What's that etiquette for listening to others? Do you expect all your microphones and your cameras to be switched on or switched off? There's two schools of thought around that. When they're switched on, when people can be seen and heard, they are more likely to be showing that they're listening and then actually listening. But as we all know, when video cameras and even sound is added to the mix, it can really draw down on our internet speed. So you're going to have to work out what works for your team and your team members. Will you use chat for questions? It kind of just depends on the size of your meeting. Is it useful for everyone to have a role? So will someone be a timekeeper? Will someone be a note taker? Will someone monitor the chat? And will someone be responsible to document what actions and instructions were decided at the meeting and then circulate those afterwards? I guess we just encourage you to keep your meetings as interactive as possible. Keep your monologues to a minimum. Make sure that you're building in, opportunities for people to have a say and people to interact, so that everyone does actually keep listening. And obviously, to be able to do this, we'll need reliable access to technology. How will your team access those central IT systems? And what workarounds will you put in place if actually things like Objective or other e-documents or e-filing systems aren't accessible? Will you save your files to the desktop and then move them across later? You just need to work out as a team what alternatives you have available to you and how your ICT team can support you at this time. Lastly, discuss with your team what their workspace at home is like, whether or not there are distractions that could hinder their ability to concentrate. Working from home makes work, health and safety a shared responsibility. So encourage your team to think through how they can create safe, sustainable, and above all, pleasant workspace. What we're finding right now is that the workspace that was fine for working from home, say 1 day a week, isn't actually that great for 5 days a week. So we need to be thinking really proactively and making steps towards having an ergonomically safe workspace. We can tell you that Safe Work has put together some really good advice about ergonomics at home, so we can share some of those links at the end of the session. You'll also need to be careful about slips, trips and falls. You know, that cup of tea that you might spill when you're trying to answer the phone, then you might slip over the spilt tea when you're racing to stop your kids fighting if they're homeschooling. It's important to be vigilant, you know, and then the last risk that we need to be super aware about is overwork, but we will cross that one off later. Now, I just did want to spend a quick moment talking about MS Teams, because our team has been using this for at least 6 months now, and I know that most of the sector does have it but might not be using it. So I just did want to touch on some of the features. It's really easy to set up a team. You can see this is actually just a screenshot of some of my teams. So I've got quite 5 different teams here that shows you what you can set up, and under each team name is the channels that are associated. So you can add in any channels, but there is a general channel that is common to all of your teams. And up here across the top of your tabs, now that general tab always appears. And when you click on your general tab, it sort of takes you to a Facebook page for work. And you can, in this space, have conversations about what you're working on or what you want to share with your team. You can set up meetings and you can even record those meetings. And on this left panel, you can see the calendar tab there. It relates to your Outlook calendar. So you can click on that and see what meetings are coming up and whether or not they're MS Teams meetings. You can also, you know, share GIFs and jokes, and, you know, it can be a real space to build your cohesion amongst your team members. You can also share files and work on those files at the same time, which is quite a bonus for any of us who have systems like Objective, where you can't actually work on the same files at the same time. And then you can add different features up here, a meeting notes space, a brainstorming space. When you click on this plus, it also takes you to a page that's got a heap of different apps that you can add to your team's space. On the left panel, you can see there's an activity little icon, and that will show you when there's new activity. And it also comes up as bold. So you can see these 2 teams have got new activity that I haven't actually looked at yet. There's a chat function here where you can chat with individuals who are also on Teams or multiple people. The advantage of Teams over Skype is that it records those conversations, so you can go back and have a look at them. You can make calls, and they can be video calls or just voice calls. And here is where all your files are located, so it's really easy to find them. I won't talk about Teams for any longer, but we just wanted to encourage you to have a go at that. If you haven't used it yet, it's worth just getting in and having a play and splashing around. Set up a play space with your team so that you can just explore the features. None of my team members have done any kind of training on using Teams, but we're using it really well. But there are some really great YouTube clips that Microsoft have made available publicly that you could go and have a look at. So next we did want to talk about the dilemmas and challenges, because obviously the change has happened really quickly for all of us. Even though many of us might have been using flexible work for some time, this rapid shift into a new way of working obviously won't be free of dilemmas and challenges. But the great thing is that we can plan and prepare for those up front by talking about those with your team, sharing your concerns and your questions, and having your team share theirs. Only that in that way can you then effectively come up with some solutions or workarounds as a team. And involving your team in that really builds trust, cohesion, and critically the buy-in that you need at this time. So start by thinking about a regular day. What's your DILO, or your day in the life of? What technology will you need to use? And what resources or files do you need access to? Who do you need to meet with? And how will you do all these from home? So we've set up a template for you. It's very simple, and you can use this with your team. We will send it out later on so that you can use it with your team. Either you can send it out to your team and ask them to fill it in, or you can, do it at a meeting that you have. But basically, you just need to list all those tasks that as a team you need to do, what resources you'll need to get those done, be they technology or human resources or financial, what could possibly go wrong, and then what are your workarounds? So as a team, how will you deal with that when things do go wrong? Because they will. And I guess that also helps then for those team members who might not have the initiative to come up with workarounds. At least then if you agree as a team, it gives that sense of security that we're planned, we're prepared, we know what to do when things go wrong. So what workarounds will you have when things like technology fails? If video conferencing fails, can you switch quickly to phone conference instead as a team? Or if it fails just for one person during a team, then you just quickly hit record and preserve the rest of the meeting so that that person can come back in later on and view the discussion. And how will you cope when your records management system drops out? And then lastly, what are those deal breakers? So those things that just won't work or that might cause major disruption to your work. What are the things that as a team we just can't do at the moment? So, running events. Are there even workarounds for those? Things like award ceremonies and recognitions. There's no reason why we can't come up with a new system for those things during this time. It's just about working together to solve those challenges. So work with your team and you can use that template as a guide. Now, next, I will hand over to Siobhan to talk about taking a team-based approach.
Thank you, Kat. So what's a team-based approach? The reason we're quite passionate about it really at the Public Service Commission is in the work that we've done across the sector, we find that flexible working itself has existed for decades in the public sector, right? And there's always been quite a bit of flexible work occurring. There's been policies around flexible work in place for a long time. But what we have seen in our data across the sector, particularly in the People Matter Employee Survey, is that there hadn't really been any appreciable change in use or satisfaction with flexible work. And when we did some digging, we found out it was quite often because the way that we went about arranging our flexible working was quite, it was done in a very prescriptive sort of way that wasn't really allowing us to adapt appropriately to the way we work now or what technology allows for us. So what we mean by that is, as managers, we would find an employee would come to us, they would take a business case type approach, they would justify a reason for asking for flexibility. And that was usually pretty okay the first time, and the second time you got asked by somebody in your team. By the time you got asked a third time, you'd start to think, oh, hang on a second. This is just a one-way organisation or one-way discussion, but it's not necessarily allowing me to look across the systemic impacts of flexible working across an entire team. And that type of approach simply wasn't sustainable when potentially anyone could ask for flexibility. So we worked with the Diversity Council of Australia and developed a methodology around how you can take a team-based approach to flexibility. And what it means briefly is just that you sit down with your team and you talk about, well, what are the outcomes that we need to protect within our team? So I mentioned before the business, the team and the individual outcomes. And we'll show you a template for that in a minute. Then what are the peaks and troughs? Who are the core stakeholders that we need to communicate with? Where are the dependencies? How does our work ebb and flow over the course of a year? And then and only then do you have a discussion about, well, what kind of flexibility can we do in this sort of instance? And the reason we're talking about it now with you is that while everyone is doing a very overwhelmingly a defined form of flexibility, which is working from home, we may need other forms of flexibility within that as well. So we may need, particularly with school holidays coming up, we may find that we need to adjust start and finish times quite radically. We may need to break up our workday and do shifts with those of us who are able to swap care and coverage arrangements with our partners. And that means that we may need to entertain things like sharing work tasks with colleagues in order to keep things progressing. So it needs a lot more planning, basically. So what we recommend is, you can see a template, just a draft template on screen, and this is based from a generalised version that we worked on with a team in commissioning at Family and Community Services. Identify what are the business outcomes that you need to maintain or protect over this next period. So, for example, is it productivity, and can you quantify what that looks like? Is it responsiveness to queries, to ministerial requests, to questions on notice? If so, what does that look like? Is it stakeholder feedback and maintaining stakeholder feedback, or at least screening to make sure there's no noise, so there's no deterioration in feedback? And is there any capability concerns that you have over this period that you need to protect? So are there coverage or business requirements around having certain skill sets on tap at certain times? From a team perspective, what do you want to protect as a team? What matters to you guys as a team? Do you need a positive team culture? Is that something that you want to maintain or enhance? Is it a sense of cooperation? Is it a sense of belonging? So sit with your team. We'd recommend spending about 2 hours, an hour and a half to 2 hours on this process, and talk about what matters to them as a team, because team connection and positive team culture is really ultimately the thing that keeps us coming back to our workplace year in, year out. And then finally, what matters to all of us as individuals over this period? So ask everybody to contribute the things that really matter to them as a person. So is it work-life balance? Is it efficient use of time now that we're free of some lengthy commutes? Is it ensuring that we maintain fitness and wellness over this period, as well as getting our work done? And then what's the balance? What's the equilibrium between the three that has to be achieved? Once you've agreed this as a team, that then becomes the benchmark by which you measure all of the performance of the team over the next few months. And it becomes something that you use to check in as a team during your team meetings, but also in your one-on-ones as well, to see how you're going against those things. What's everyone's perspective? Is productivity still where it should be? Or do we need to be pragmatic about what productivity is possible during this period? How is the team culture going? How's everyone feeling? And how are they feeling within themselves? And it becomes so important that we do have those conversations over this next period for all three of them. Because as Scott mentioned at the beginning, the one thing we don't want to do is get to the end of this period and find that one of those three dimensions is completely out of sync, because it will start to affect the other two. The second step that's really important in taking a team-based approach is to challenge your assumptions about the way that your work is done. And it's, in its own way, it's a bit of an unusual opportunity for us at the moment to be able to do that. So often we find ourselves in very reactive modes at work. We do things because that's the way they're done. And we rarely get the opportunity to step back and reflect and say, well, actually, is that the best way of doing it? Do we really need to do this task? Could this task be better off completed by a different team or a different person? What about the way we arrange this task? Could it be actually completed in a completely different way? And the sheer necessity of having to work differently at the moment makes it such an opportune time to have those conversations. Then and only then, as I mentioned, do we need to have a discussion about the type of flexibility that's available. And it's imperative to have such an open mind right now about the way we're going to get our job done. It is going to look radically different. It's no longer a 7-hour block for anyone, I think. So think through the types of flexibility that might be appropriate, with reference, of course, to your industrial arrangements within your agency and the technology availability you have in order to be able to get that job done. So could it look like split shifts? Could it look like people needing to work a compressed week, if that's possible, so for when they do have care available? Could it look like a work share or job share? So if the work of the team has tailed off dramatically and you have some people in your team who may need to go part-time temporarily, could it look like arranging a temporary work share between those people in order to get the coverage that you need over that period? And then finally, establish some very clear and agreed principles and a culture of flexibility, the how of how you'll work flexibly over this time. I'll talk in a little more detail about the rules of the road in a moment, but I really can't emphasise enough how important they are. So if we go to work redesign, the next slide, I mentioned before that we may need to start thinking really differently about the way we do our work at the moment. So we will release a tool probably in the next week or so, the Public Service Commission, which will help you guide you through this process. It's an analysis, basically a job analysis. And it's meant to be very quick and dirty, very basic. It's not perfect. It's for responding to the conditions that we find ourselves in the moment, with some accompanying tip sheets on what you need to discuss in the conversations you have around that. But we emphasise, even if you don't use the tool, taking an approach where you step back and look at the criticality of the tasks that you have within the roles, and then start to think through different ways you could possibly do them, or where they could be farmed out to different members of the team. I should add, of course, you can't ask people who have less external commitments to do certain work, but if they're willing to offer their help, then that is fantastic. It's really an all hands, all in sort of approach that needs to be taken with teams across the next period. And also, is it possible to negotiate client expectations? I think at its base, the Diversity Council talks a lot about the ideal worker, and I think the most basic thing that we can do right now is challenge these ideas that we may have about the ideal worker and the ideal work, because I don't think any of us can be ideal at the moment. I mean, one of the most important messages I think our Commissioner has given us over this time is that we have permission to not be perfect, and a recognition that some of us are going to drop the ball. So think through in your team how you can plan for acknowledging that some of us are going to drop the ball, and some of us will need extra time off that we may not be expecting. Some of us will struggle to juggle at times the multiple commitments we have. So think through as a team how you can challenge the way you're doing things at the moment to maintain a bit of continuity, and keep an eye out for the tool that we'll be releasing soon to help you with that. The next part is the rules of the road. I mentioned these before. This is the how-to of how you're going to work flexibly, and it's really talking about all of the capturing in some sort of format on whatever your preferred platform is, whether it's on Teams or something like that, how your team is going to work over this period. So document all the things, all the decisions that Kat mentioned earlier that you'll need to make. How often will you meet? What platform will you use for meeting or communicating? Will there be a crossover day where everyone is all available if possible? Will that be a camera on day? How will you let each other know when things need to change? How will you get hold of each other? What's your default way of communicating? Will you exchange mobile phone numbers? Is it a text message if something is urgent? How much notice will you have to give? So is it 24 hours notice? We use a 24 hours notice rule in our team. A lot of teams find that quite useful for when things need to change. Sorry guys, I know I said I was going to be online for the 9 o'clock meeting. Unfortunately, something's come up. I won't be available until 11 p.m. And also the rules around not cancelling meetings because you're working elsewhere on a particular day. What are the guidelines, with obvious exceptions, but what are the guidelines you're going to agree around the commitments you will make to each other over this period? There's a link there on the slide. We will post it in the LinkedIn group. It's also available on our website. Some draft rules of the road or protocols for working out of the office that we've captured from all of our workshops and work with the sector to date, and you can use those as a base. But it's super important that your own team design them over this period. Now, managing for outcomes is also crucial. It kind of goes without saying, but it is so important that everyone have updated performance plans over this period, acknowledging that isn't always straightforward with some of the systems, the HR systems that we use, unfortunately. It isn't straightforward to go on and update them. So have an agreed way where you will capture any pivoting that your team has had to do, any pivot planning, and what are those new goals or amended goals that everyone would be working on. What is the outcome that should be achieved from those goals? Quantify that as much as possible and set very clear expectations, not just on when work needs to be done, but to what standard does that work need to be done? What capabilities will need to be demonstrated over that period, and be very, very clear on those. Agree with everyone what their availability is likely to be over this period. And this is an excellent opportunity once you've set up those very clear outcomes that everyone will be working towards, and have your mechanisms in place for how they're going to work towards them and how you'll catch up on how progress is going. From there, it's really important to trust. I always quote Hemingway at this point: if you want to know if you can trust a man, trust him. So the best way we do get asked about trust quite a bit at the PSC, and our advice is absolutely just trust somebody, set the mechanisms in place, the fail-safes and safety nets, and then let people do it, because our evidence is certainly that overwhelmingly, once those principles are in place, taking a team-based approach, people will continue to deliver, and quite often deliver even better. So again, there's a tip sheet on our website on managing for outcomes, and there's another helpful tip sheet as well you might like around the importance of distinguishing between job performance and flex performance, and not confusing the two. So I will hand back over to Kat next, and Kat will talk to you about team cohesion.
Great, thanks. We just wanted to finish this session by focusing on the more human aspects of what we're all going through. Protecting team cohesion is obviously one of the most common concerns that team leaders have at this time. You know, that team members will experience isolation as a result of being geographically separated from their team and even their stakeholders. Right now, that's a really real risk that needs to be mitigated differently. Team cohesion is so crucial for effective and engaged teams to succeed. So where there's irregular face-to-face interaction, an over-reliance on email, or a build-up of unresolved issues, your cohesion as a team can really be undermined. So as a team, discuss what processes or habits you can build to mitigate against isolation. So for example, you might want to put team members in buddies at this time, or pairs, so that somebody working remotely has a regular point of contact with someone who might be located elsewhere. This can be really useful when you have new starters in your team, and it can just help to establish that rapport more quickly if you pair up a more experienced person with a less experienced person for support. Secondly, it's a really great idea to have catch-up time at the beginning of meetings or just before the meeting, so you know, people can opt in if they want. That really fosters those stronger interpersonal relationships amongst the team. You can kick it off with an open question, such as what did you do on the weekend? And you'll find that those social bonds form more readily when you do just allow for people to share a bit more about who they are as a person instead of just what they're working on. Now, if issues do come up between team members that can affect the way the team's functioning, it's so important to address those issues up front before letting them get away from you and then undermining that cohesion. So use your constructive language skills, your open listening skills to build that safe space that encourages people to raise the issues and work together to resolve them. Showing your team that you value their feedback and that you're serious about taking action to promote team harmony and well-being builds trust and engagement with your team. Just be careful of written communication at this time, especially when people are feeling a bit anxious generally. It's so easy to misunderstand what someone's actually saying or to read into it what's not there. So where possible, pick up the phone, really use that tone of voice and the non-verbals via video that can help people to clearly understand what it is you're trying to say. Now, in terms of looking after your team and yourself, there's a few tips we've got, but we also want to hear from you about your top tips for wellbeing, so you can start sharing them on the chat function now if you like. Now, virtual teams are at risk of overwork and underwork, particularly if they're working from home. There's that temptation to keep checking your emails and not switch off, and that gets harder to fight. Or people procrastinate because they're actually motivated by others and they're struggling working solo at this time. So the best way to mitigate against this risk is to proactively track your team's workload with them to make sure that they're not overwhelmed or underwhelmed. You can take that team approach so that if somebody's doing too much, you might want to share some of their tasks with a different team member and just get that balance. It really helps your team members to feel valued and visible when you're showing that you're concerned about their workload and about their well-being. So don't create an expectation of 24/7 availability in the way you model your own approach to work. That will lead to burnout for yourself and for your team, and you'll lose people. So communicate your expectations clearly, that you expect them to self-manage, that you expect them to use their wisdom to balance meeting deadlines with taking breaks, and using flex leave to make up for the extra effort that they might put in when required. You need to role model that yourself, because your credibility is only as good as your visibility on these sorts of things. So ask your team what their daily transition is in and out of work. What are those habits or those routines that different people are putting in place to be able to separate from their work, or separate from their home when they need to start work? Do they go for a walk around the block? Do they dance around the lounge room? Do they do some karaoke with the kids? Whatever works. It's important to have a routine that makes you from I guess makes you move from your work to your home when they're both in the same place. So that psychological detachment is so important for being able to be present at work when you need to be, and then present at home when you need to be. And in a fun way, you could ask your team members to share how they're staying active and moving their bodies throughout the workday. Could be a really comic way to build that cohesion as a team. Ask people if they're accessing things like free yoga or aerobic sessions in their lounge room. Someone shared with me a Zumba session the other day that they said that was really fun. There's nothing to stop people getting outside in the fresh air, and you should be encouraging people to do that, obviously as long as they're maintaining their distance from others. And encourage your team to really watch the screen time. I know myself, yesterday I spent the whole day in front of a screen at work. So I really made sure I didn't then go and watch Netflix or add to my screen time over the length of the day. Yeah, so encourage your team to be really mindful of that and to take those regular breaks that they'll need. And then when you are having your check-ins with team members about their workload, ask about their well-being as well. I know that Safe Work has put together some really good guidelines around mental health during COVID-19. So we can send you that link. It's worth reading that. Just that whole conversation around are you okay in a non-intrusive way just will help people to feel safe with you to share, oh, actually, I'm not going that so well today. And then you can plan around that. Yeah, so I guess while the world feels a bit chaotic, it is important to help people to put in place those routines to provide that sense of control and keep our less motivated people working efficiently. Now, just lastly, we wanted to share with you some of the resources that we have developed over the past sort of 12 to 18 months for flexible working. There's some conversation guides for employees and managers that you could use with your team just to be able to think through what it takes to succeed at flexible working and have a conversation. Today's session has been based on our team-based design toolkit and the dispersed team guide. So it's really worth as managers reading those in detail to go a bit deeper on what we've shared with you today. And then lastly, we developed some skill sets for employees, managers, HR and leaders. They're really about what you need to know, say and do to work flexibly or to support flexible working. So that could be a really great tool to use with your team at this time. There's a self-assessment, like a quiz that you can do. You find out what maybe your 3 lowest areas or strengths are. And then there's a development guide that gives you a bunch of online resources that can help you develop in those skills. So check out the website, we've put the link there, or go to our LinkedIn group that we started about a week and a half ago. We've already got, I don't know, maybe 200 or so people have joined that. It's really targeted at middle managers to be able to support each other, share ideas, ask questions, receive advice. We'll also send you the details of that group, and we'd love you to join that so that you have really direct access to us as a team. Or if you wanted to take it offline, email us at flexible.working@psc.nsw.gov.au. nsw.gov.au, and we'll do our best to answer your questions. We're around to the end of this year, so we're really here to support the sector at this time. So please reach out to us for help. Thank you. Scott or Siobhan, would you like to just say some parting remarks?
I'll just say really quickly, thanks everyone for, we've had 250 people join this session, and I mean, the power of that is multiplied when we start sharing the ideas and the things that we're doing with others. And so that's part of your task and your challenge. But thank you. And if we look through the chat that's been happening across the whole session, it's pretty amazing all the different things that people are doing and working differently. The most important thing is to not just focus on work and not just focus on our well-being. It's to think about everything holistically and about how do we together get the best outcomes for ourselves and for our work and provide some continuity over time. So be mindful for that. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And we'll keep learning, and we'll be a better public servant in a couple of weeks than we were today, because I certainly know I am today than I was a few weeks ago from my experiences. And be reflective, but keep doing our best, and as we all are. So stay safe and be well, and we'll see you all soon, hopefully in one room one day. So bye.